If Reds closer Alexis Díaz is good, why is his fastball so mid? Don't believe me? Here are the facts. Alexis Díaz throws his fastball 94.7 miles per hour, which seems fast until you realize across the league, the average fastball coming out of the bullpen in 2023 is 94.7 miles per hour. And now you're saying, oh, Bailey, what about the movement? What about the movement? Mid. In terms of fastballs thrown with that velocity, the vertical movement and horizontal movement, right at league average. Look below at some of the top four-seam velo guys in the league in 2023. Yohan Duran, Felix Bautista, Aroldis Chapman. These are some of the best relievers in the league this year. That's not Alexis Díaz. Look at vertical movement. Whose fastball is dropping the least, meaning it fights off gravity the best? Felix Bautista, Ryan Helsley, Pete Fairbanks, Aroldis Chapman, and then Spencer Strider. I mean, come on. This isn't Alexis Díaz. The movement is mid. The velo is mid. You can throw a fastball just like Alexis Díaz's and get absolutely crushed in Major League Baseball in 2023. Hitters are that good. Look at Michael Grove of the Dodgers. Hitters are slugging .735 against his four-seam fastball. What velocity is it thrown at? 94.7 miles per hour. What is the movement? Same as Díaz, mid. Same velocity, same movement profile, getting crushed. It's not a bad fastball, it's an average fastball. And when you're a major league hitter and you've seen many different velocities and movement profiles, seeing a fastball that is just a composite, a total average, makes for a pretty comfortable at bat. Does he at least do a good job of locating it? Well, according to the pitch modeling stuff on Fangraphs, no. I mean, according to Pitching Bot, they have him at a 31 on the 20 to 80 scale in terms of fastball command. And in terms of location plus, he's an 85, whereas 100 is league average. That's actually the worst in the Reds bullpen among their full-time relievers this year. So we've talked about velocity, we've talked about movement, we've talked about command. Is there an important fourth thing that I'm leaving out? 100th percentile extension. Extension is how much you are striding forward off the mound towards the plate, and the more you do that, the more you'll be bearing down on the hitter, the less time they're going to have to decide whether they swing or not. And what's cool is with StatCast, you can actually see how much of a difference that makes. He averages 94.7 miles per hour on his fastball, but in terms of the perceived velocity, how the hitter is perceiving it, it looks like it's coming in at 97.4 miles per hour, because while that mound may still be 60 feet 6 inches away from home plate, Alexis Díaz only has to throw it 53 feet after he strides off the mound. You can really see how much of a difference that makes when we bring in a low extension pitcher to compare with. So Brusdar Graterol, known as a real flamethrower, averaging 98.4 miles per hour on his fastballs this year, he has the exact same perceived velocity as Alexis Díaz, because he only extends 5.7 feet off the mound. So Alexis Díaz, getting 2 feet closer, has the same perceived velocity as Brusdar Graterol. So where Alexis Díaz releases the ball is super important, but we haven't even really scratched the surface on that concept. This is a comparison between Alexis Díaz and his teammate Kevin Herget in the same game versus the Cubs last May. This isn't the best camera angle for it, but just looking at where their feet land, you can really tell that Díaz is taking a much greater stride off the mound than Herget. According to the extension numbers, about 2 feet more. But the other key thing, look at the height of their release point. Alexis Díaz is releasing the baseball 1.5 feet lower than Kevin Herget is. Kevin Herget, very over-the-top delivery. Alexis Díaz with a lowered arm slot. And if you just follow the path of the fastballs, even though the velocity and the movement and location are ultimately pretty similar, it's the shape, the trajectory that look totally different. Fact, pitchers are tall people that stand on a hill. They do not throw the ball straight, they throw the ball down at you. Justin Verlander can't throw his fastball flat from his release point. It'll go over Jose Altuve's head. Instead, he has to throw down to even reach the top of the strike zone. The difference between that flat angle from the release point and the actual trajectory of the pitch is your vertical approach angle. Where is the ball being released, and where does the ball end up? So let's say Verlander throws one right down the middle to Jose Altuve. Well, it's going to be at a downward angle. And because Jose Altuve's a good hitter, he's not going to swing completely flat. He's going to try to swing in a way that matches up with Verlander's downward approach angle. So for him, it's going to be an upward approach angle or a slight uppercut to his swing. And if he does that, this green zone is going to be where he can get in front of the baseball, maybe pull it down the line for a home run. But what if Justin Verlander could actually get a perfectly flat approach angle? Well, he'd have to really lower his release point, but the end result would be less of a contact-happy zone for Jose Altuve. As you can see, the contact-happy zone, the green bit, has shrunk between these two approach angles. Thankfully, there is a vertical approach angle leaderboard, courtesy of the pitch leaderboard from Alex Chamberlain. I'll be sure to link that in the description. So these are the pitchers with the lowest difference between their release point on the mound and where the ball ends up, vertically speaking. Top two guys are Adam Cimber and Tim Hill. These are classic sidearmers. In fact, I would consider Adam Cimber to be more of a submarine type delivery. And no offense to those guys, but they're throwing 85 and 91 respectively, and they're not getting that much vertical movement because they have such a sidearm delivery. Now, I should point out, Tim Hill's at negative 3.2 degrees. The average is negative 4.8 in the league. So this is a case where half a degree makes a big difference, and 1 degree makes a huge difference. And the next two guys up on the leaderboard at negative 3.5 degrees vertical approach angle are Alexis Díaz's fastball and Paul Sewald's fastball, both of which do have that vertical movement that you would expect to see for a league average fastball at the very least. And Alexis Díaz is sidearming it at 94.7 miles per hour, which we know with his 7.7 feet of extension is more like 97 miles per hour. I know I'm probably the last person on earth that should be giving some sort of real-life baseball demonstration, but I'll do my best. The point I'm trying to make is if you have a really over-the-top, over-your-head delivery with a high release point, it's easier for you to get that backspin and get that vertical movement, because look at that arm angle, And the hitter's going to see that high release and that high arm angle, and they're going to know that ball's coming in very backspinny, a lot of rise, a lot of vertical movement on that. What Alexis Díaz is able to do is lower that arm angle while still getting that league average backspin, that league average movement, that league average velocity, which is deceptive because if the hitter sees this drop down, they're going to anticipate a pitch that actually has more side spin, if anything, and that's when you're going to get sort of that Tim Hill, that Adam Cimber type movement. It's not a lot of verticality to it. Now, if I'm the one that's pitching, I'm actually lowering the arm slot even more and then striking you out with a slider. Because I'm going to bring myself in. I'm going to go front door slider called strike 3. How about that? Oh, I'm amped up. I like it. Shout out Super Mega Baseball 4. Paul Sewald, meanwhile, is throwing his fastball just 92, but because of that flat approach angle, he gets a ton of whiffs and a ton of strikeouts. Flat with regards to fastball movement doesn't sound very good. It's usually a bad thing, but a flat approach angle with that fastball can be really potent. Joe Ryan's fastball is another one with a low vertical approach angle. He throws it about 92, but he gets a ton of whiffs because he releases it low and throws it high up in the zone, and that gives it sort of that flat angle. Spencer Strider combines his elite velocity and elite vertical movement with a lower than average vertical approach angle. And because he's shorter, he gets to release the ball a little bit lower. I actually think Díaz's extension comes into play here as well because while he's 6'2", he gets a little bit further down the hill than everyone else and thus lowers his approach angle. Here's a StatCast search I've been having some fun with. So we're looking at fastballs thrown over 95 miles per hour with a vertical release point under 5 feet, and we're looking for at least respectable vertical movement. And as I scroll down here, the guys who have done that the most the last 2 seasons, Craig Kimbrell, Alexis Díaz, and Edwin Díaz. So his brother has this exact same ability, getting that velocity and that vertical movement from a lowered arm slot, and thus creating a flat vertical approach angle, which is harder to make contact with. Coming into this, you knew velocity was important for a fastball. You knew location was important for a fastball. You knew movement was important for a fastball. But there's a fourth quality that's also very important, and it's where you are physically releasing the ball. Of course, Alexis Díaz does have another pitch that he throws about half the time, and that's his slider, and he throws it pretty hard, especially when you take into account his extension. So these are pitchers who have thrown at least 200 sliders with a perceived velocity over 90 miles per hour this year. Only 10 of them have done it, including 3 other relievers, Emmanuel Clase, Elvis Peguero, and Gregory Santos, but Alexis Díaz is up there as well, so he is throwing that slider hard, especially when you take into account the extension he's getting off the mound. And if you go by run value, it'll tell you that the slider is the real star of the show here, but I'm not so sure. Because run value is based off of plate appearances that end, and he's definitely ending more plate appearances with the slider. You know, he has 45 strikeouts with that compared to just 23 with the fastball. But if the question is, hey, what pitch is responsible for getting him into those 2 strike counts anyways, it's probably going to be that fastball. And the other impressive thing about the fastball, he's thrown it 387 times this year, has not allowed a single home run. Gonna finish things off here with the Stathead special. Use code FOOLISH20 at checkout for 20% off. Also have a video in the description with all the cool searches and a demo of what you can do. But we're looking at pitchers here in 2023 with at least 2 wins above replacement and 4 win probability added. So win probability added, that's a very reliever-centric stat. Relievers are expected to lead in that. And as we scroll up here, only 2 pitchers have done it so far. Felix Bautista and Alexis Díaz. That is great company for Alexis Díaz. Felix Bautista is having an amazing season, but it's because of that insane velocity he has and that insane vertical movement he has. Alexis Díaz doesn't have that, but he's been almost as effective purely because of where he releases the fastball.